Hello, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome to Saturday Livestream. As always, we will start off Saturday Livestream with the comment of the week. And today's comment of the week goes to, drumroll please, Warren Smith. Sorry to disagree, for while I don't trust the literal words of the gospel writers, I'm sorry, this is under Josephus in the Gospels, no music. Sorry to disagree, for while I don't trust the literal words of the gospel writers, I don't trust Josephus' literal words either. Josephus employed a form of Kabbalah to hide Christian involvement in the Jewish Revolution of 66 to 73 CE. I must disagree with that, Warren. Josephus was not a Kabbalist. He was a Pharisee. He tells you that himself. The gospel writers knew what Josephus had employed, the word to save the Christians from their sins, and they reinterpreted Josephus' accounts, again using Kabbalah, by personifying the word into the miracle worker identified as Jesus. Again, I must disagree with that. That is going to take a long time to explain why I disagree with that, but I will get there, I promise. There is more to just why Christianity did not exist in this time than just Josephus' words. But like I said, it takes a long time to get there, and I am now just laying the groundwork for it. In the Gospels, Josephus' history of the revolt is represented by the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, and the name Joseph of Arimathea was intended to be a disguise of Josephus' Aramaic name, Joseph bar Matthias. Others have also made this connection. The tomb actually appeared empty. The inspiration for the gospel accounts of the crucifixion comes from Josephus' account of how he saved a seemingly unidentified crucified man in his autobiography. And the words of Josephus, and when I was sent by Titus Caesar with Cerealians and 1,000 horsemen to a certain village called Thekoa, in order to know whether it were a place fit for a camp. As I came back, I saw many captives crucified. This is me talking. That doesn't surprise me. Thousands upon thousands were crucified as punishment and a reminder, don't mess with Rome. Back to Josephus, and remembered 3 of them as my former acquaintances. I was very sorry at this in my mind, and went with tears in my eyes to Titus, and told him of them. So he immediately commanded them to be taken down, and to have the greatest care taken of them, in order to their recovery. Yet 2 of them died under the physician's hands, while the 3rd recovered. The fact that this passage appears to offer no direct connection to Christ or Christians has prevented this passage from being discussed as anything more than an example of how Christ himself may have survived his own crucifixion. However, if the mention of the place called Tekoa and Josephus' apparently unmanly plea to Titus are taken together, they serve as an allusion to the Old Testament woman from Tekoa whose story is told in 2 Samuel 14. This passage opens with, and Warren Smith, I'm sorry, but this post is long, so I'm going to let the readers, my listeners, go ahead and read 2 Samuel 14. And I will pick up with Warren Smith's words. This method of disguising names is explained in Plato's Cratylus. Google the Latin word Cratylus for further insight. And Josephus offers another example in his autobiography when he writes that he marched to the village of Chabolo, situated on the confines of Ptolemais, and there kept my forces together, pretending to get ready to fight with Placidus. This Placidus is actually a reference to the Tranquillus, and Josephus is admitting that any differences between his account and the accounts of Tranquillus were intentional, and the mention of the place called Chabolo further communicates the fact that Kabbalah was employed. Again, Josephus was not a Kabbalist. He was a Pharisee. And since he was a Pharisee, he was totally against Kabbalah. Look it up, people. Then Warren goes on. Most of what he writes I will be getting to later. So it would just be me reading his words and then say, yeah, I'm going to get to this later. But Warren, you don't have to take Josephus' words for it. I mean, I'm ready to admit that, Josephus has an agenda too. All writers have an agenda. But at least Josephus was man enough to put his name on his works. Hey, Julie. Hey, Marianne. While the gospel writers are anonymous, and you cannot tell me that the gospel writers choosing to remain anonymous has anything to do with their guts. Because if they had any guts, they would have put their names on said gospels. Not to mention the fact that the first gospel written was Mark in about 70 to 80 CE, and the rest of the gospels are taken from Mark. So, yeah, there's that. Hi, Free. Hi, Julie. Hi, Marianne. So, yes, I will be getting there. But Josephus isn't the only one who talks about this. And I will be getting there as well. You just got to give me time. So, the next thing is Today in History. Toy company Wham-O produces first Frisbees. On January 23, 1957, machines at the Wham-O Toy Company rolled out the first batch of their aerodynamic plastic discs, now known to millions of fans all over the world as Frisbees. The story of the Frisbee began in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where William Frisbee opened the Frisbee Pie Company in 1871. Students from nearby universities would throw the empty pie tins to each other, yelling Frisbee as they let go. In 1948, Walter Frederick Morrison and his partner Warren Fraschiani invented a plastic version of the disc called the flying saucer that could fly further and more accurately than the pie plates. After splitting with Fraschiani, Morrison made an improved model in 1955 and sold it to the new toy company Wham-O as the quote-unquote Pluto platter, an attempt to cash in on the public craze over space and unidentified flying objects. So that's a neat little tidbit of information for you to wow your friends with. Hey, Lisa. I used to too. So, anyway, all right, now for the main event. And we're actually going to finish up the book of Genesis today. By the way, thank you to all my fans and subscribers for putting up with this being a little bit later than usual. I do have to remain a bit flexible because I am taking care of my dad. So thank you for putting up with that. And we'll go right into the main event. Genesis 46. So Israel set out with all that was his, and when he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. That's quite interesting. Why doesn't it say he offered sacrifices to his God? Instead, it says he offered sacrifices to the God of his father, Isaac. Very interesting wording there. Oh, okay, Marianne. And God spoke to Israel in a vision at night and said, Jacob, Jacob. Okay, people. Did God already forget that he had changed Jacob's name to Israel? I'm just asking because, earlier God said, your name's not Jacob anymore, it's Israel. And now in chapter 46, he's saying Jacob. Like I said, did he forget that he changed his name to Israel? You got to wonder sometimes about this stuff. Here I am, he replied. I am God, the God of your fathers, he said. Um, you know, um, if you're the only one talking to him, if you're the only one talking to Jacob, God, he probably knows it's you. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes. Okay, so this is a theme that you will see recur because in the New Testament, Jesus and his family supposedly flee from Herod into the land of Egypt. So the people of Israel, the Israelites, kind of have a love-hate relationship with Egypt, is what I'm getting out of this. Just a minute, guys. What I'm getting from this is that Israel had a love-hate relationship with Egypt because they think of it as good one day, and then the next day they're just like, well, we hate them now. So that's just what I get from this. And this isn't my um, this isn't my scholarly evaluation of the Bible. So I'm just giving you my thoughts. Then Jacob left Beersheba, and Israel's sons took their father Jacob and their children and their wives in the carts that Pharaoh had sent to transport him. So Jacob and all his offspring went to Egypt, taking with them their livestock and the possessions they had acquired in Canaan. Maybe, Lisa. Verse 7. Jacob brought with him to Egypt his sons and grandsons and his daughters and granddaughters, all his offspring. Okay, and then it goes to list Jacob and his sons and his sons' sons. And I'm going to, that's verses 8 through 14. I'm not going to read those. I'm going to pick up in verse 15. These were the sons Leah bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram, besides his daughter Dinah. These sons and daughters of his were 33 in all. The sons of Gad, Zephon, Haggai, Shuni, Esben, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. Oh, the sons of Gad, rather. Okay, so they're still doing the sons and grandsons and daughters and granddaughters. So let's skip down to verse 26. All those who went to Egypt with Jacob, again, did God forget that he changed Jacob's name to Israel? All those who went to Egypt with Jacob, those who were his direct descendants, not counting his sons' wives, numbered 66 persons. With the two sons who had been born to Joseph in Egypt, the members of Jacob's family, which went to Egypt, were 70 in all. Now Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to get directions to Goshen, rather. I'm sorry. When they arrived in the region of Goshen, Joseph had his chariot made ready and went to Goshen to meet his father, Israel. As soon as Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. Israel said to Joseph, "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." Verse 31. Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and speak to Pharaoh and will say to him, my brothers and father's household, who were living in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds. They tend livestock and they have brought along their flocks and herds and everything they own. When Pharaoh calls you in and asks, "What is your occupation?" you should answer, "Your servants have tended livestock from our boyhood on, just as our fathers did." Then you will be allowed to settle in the region of Goshen, for all shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians. Okay, that's actually a chapter break, and I want to break there anyway. Um, okay, so as far as we know, they were shepherds, right? But why would Joseph tell them to tell Pharaoh that they're shepherds? I mean, if they're shepherds, it's the truth, right? You shouldn't have to think about, oh, what are we going to tell Pharaoh our occupation is? It should just be, you know, the truth. But I don't know. I have no idea. Listen, the further and further I get away from my brainwashed Christian self, the more this book does not make sense. Chapter 47. Joseph went and told Pharaoh, "My father and brothers, with their flocks and herds, and everything they own, have come from the land of Canaan and are now in Goshen." He chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked the brothers, "What is your occupation?" "Your servants are shepherds," they replied to Pharaoh, "just as our fathers were." They also said to him, "We have come to live here for a while because the famine is severe in Canaan, and your servants' flocks have no pasture. So now, please, let your servants settle in Goshen." Verse 5. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your father and your brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in Goshen, and if you know of any among them with special ability, put them in charge of my own livestock." Okay, let's just stop here for a minute. Um, First of all, if shepherds, if, as Joseph said, shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians, why is Pharaoh letting them have the better part of the land? What sense does that make? Now, mind you, I don't believe any of this ever happened because we can't prove anything archaeologically until Saul. So I don't believe any of this ever happened. And even Saul was kind of like built up um, in later Israelite eyes to be this kind of founding dynasty type thing. Verse 7. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob in and presented him before Pharaoh. After Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, "How old are you?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. That's some very weird phrasing there. Very weird phrasing. As for 130 years, we can knock about 75 years off. Um, at most, he would have lived into his 40s. And that's just the way it was back then. I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying this is an exaggeration. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers. So again, we've got some really weird wording here. And um, he says, my years of pilgrimage have been few. Just a moment, guys. Um, so, um, so today, I think the oldest person living today is like 115, and that's somewhere in India. Um, so yeah, no way this dude was 130. Um, verse 10. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramses, as Pharaoh directed. Joseph also provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with food according to the number of their children. Verse 13. There was no food, however, in the whole region because the famine was severe. Both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. Joseph collected all the money that was to be found in Egypt and Canaan in payment for the grain they were buying, and he brought it to Pharaoh's palace. When the money of the people of Egypt and Canaan was gone, all Egypt came to Joseph and said, give us food. Why should we die before our eyes? Before your eyes. Our money is all gone. Um, got a question here. Did not Joseph take the surplus from the 7 good years and make it so that they were in the grain? So why should they have to pay for their food now? I can understand like foreigners having to pay for it, but why should the Egyptians who grew the food in the first place have to pay for their own food? It just doesn't make sense. Uh, verse 16. Then bring your livestock, said Joseph. I will sell you food in exchange for your livestock, since your money is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, their sheep and goats, their cattle and donkeys. And he brought them through that year with food in exchange for all their livestock. When that year was over, they came to him the following year and said, we cannot hide from our Lord the fact that since our money is gone and our livestock belongs to you, there is nothing left for our Lord except our bodies and our land. Why should we perish before your eyes, we and our land as well? Buy us and our land in exchange for food, and we with our land will be in bondage to Pharaoh. Give us seed so that we may live and not die, and that the land may not become desolate. Okay, so Pharaoh owned Egypt. Okay, that's why he was Pharaoh. It was his land to begin with. Okay, he doesn't need the land. As for selling themselves into slavery for food, that's just wrong. I'm sorry, I gotta call it like it is. It's just plain wrong. Verse 20. So Joseph bought all the land in Egypt for Pharaoh. Again, it's already his. He doesn't need to buy it. The Egyptians, one and all, sold their fields because the famine was too severe for them. The land became Pharaoh's, and Joseph reduced the people to servitude from one end of Egypt to the other. And wait a minute. Lisa, they gave all their money to Joseph for food. Let me put that on the screen so you know what they gave their money to Joseph for food. Okay, so this is the guy. This is one of the guys that's a hero of the Bible. Seriously? You're seriously gonna go there? A guy who takes these people's money, takes these people's land, according to the Bible, and takes these people as slaves. This is a hero of the Bible. I don't know about you, but I'm saying no. No. He's not a hero. Verse 22. However, he did not buy the land of the priests because they received a regular allotment from Pharaoh and had food enough from the allotment of Pharaoh gave them. That is why they did not sell their land. Joseph said to the people, now that I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh, here is seed for you so you can plant the ground. But when the crop comes in, give a fifth of it to Pharaoh. The other 4/5 you may keep as seed for the fields and as food for yourselves and your households and your children. What is with this guy? He just gets greedier and greedier. See what I mean by not such a fit hero? Verse 25. You have saved our lives, they said. May we find favor in the eyes of our Lord. We will be in bondage to Pharaoh. So Joseph established it as a law concerning land in Egypt, still in force today, that a fifth of the produce belongs to Pharaoh. It was only the land of the priests that did not become Pharaoh's. Again, I don't believe any of this ever happened. Verse 27. Now the Israelites settled in Egypt in the region of Goshen. They acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and the years of his life were 147. Again, no, not even close. When the time drew near for Israel to die, he called for his son Joseph and said to him, if I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh and promise that you will show me kindness and faithfulness. Do not bury me in Egypt, but when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me where they are buried. I will do as you say, he said. Swear to me, he said. Then Joseph swore to him, and Israel worshipped as he leaned on the top of his staff. Uh, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but in the Bible, the thigh isn't the thigh. It's a manly part, if you get my drift. Chapter 48. Sometime later, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, along with him. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," Israel rallied his strength and sat up on the bed. Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me in Luz in the land of Canaan, and there he blessed me and said to me, I am going to make you fruitful and increase your numbers. I will make you a community of peoples, and I will give this land as an everlasting possession to your descendants after you." Yep, so everlasting it was what, about 200 years? That's basically how long the kingdoms of Israel and Judah lasted. But I'll get there with my Emergence of Israel series. "Now then, your two sons born to you in Egypt, before I came to you here, will be reckoned as mine. Ephraim and Manasseh are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh will be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine. Any children born to you after them will be yours. In the territory they inherit, they will be reckoned under the names of their brothers. As I was returning from Paddan, to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan while we were still in the way, a little distance from Ephrath. So I buried her there beside the road to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. When Israel saw the sons of Joseph, he asked, Who are these? Now, I need to stop right here and let you know that Bethlehem was a common town name in Canaan and in Israel. So this is not necessarily the Bethlehem that later was to be known as the city of David. Just wanted to tell you guys that. Verse 9. They are the sons God has given me here, Joseph said to his father. Then Israel said, Bring them to me so I may bless them. Now Israel's eyes were failing because of old age, and he could hardly see. So Joseph brought his sons close to him, and his father kissed them and embraced them. Okay, I just want to stop here. Why? Okay, according to the story, Jacob lived in Egypt for 17 years, okay, according to the story. Why is Jacob just now meeting Manasseh and Ephraim? Does that make any sense to anybody? Verse 11. Israel said to Joseph, I never expected to see your face again, and now God has allowed me to see your children too. Then Joseph removed them from Israel's knees and bowed down with his face to the ground. Okay, so the youngest one, at the very least, because Israel has lived in Egypt for 17 years. So at the very least, the youngest one is, hey, sheep among wolves, the youngest one hang on, sheep among wolves. I think it does. Um, okay. When Israel saw the sons of Joseph, he asked, "Who are these?" Verse 9. "They are the sons God has given me here." Joseph said to his father, "I take that to mean they just met. Sheep among wolves." That's what I take it to mean. If it's not what it means, then, you know, sue me. I don't know. Um, there's no making heads or tails of this book. All right, so let's go back to verse 12 because I was going to say something. Then Joseph removed them from Israel's knees and bowed down with his face to the ground. All right, at this time, Jacob, also known as Israel, has lived in Egypt for 17 years, according to this chapter. At the very least, the youngest is 17 years old. And it says that Jacob is very weak. Why would Joseph put his grown ass children on the knees of a little old frail man? It's like these people don't think. They're like, oh yeah, this sounds good. So I'll just write this. Verse 13. And Joseph took both of them, Ephraim on his right toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh on his left toward Israel's right hand, and brought them close to him. But Israel reached out his right hand and put it on Ephraim's head, though he was the younger, and crossing his arms, he put his left hand on Manasseh's head, even though Manasseh was the firstborn. Now, I said this theme was going to come back up, because Ephraim is chosen over Manasseh, or so the story goes, just like Jacob was chosen over Esau, or so the story goes. Verse 15. Then he blessed Joseph and said, "May the God before whom my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, walked faithfully, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys. May they be called by my name and the names of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and may they increase greatly on the earth." When Joseph saw his father placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, he was displeased. So he took hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to him, "No, my father, this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will become great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." He blessed them that day and said, "In your name will Israel pronounce this blessing. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." So he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with you and take you back to the land of your fathers. And to you I will give one more ridge of land than to your brothers, the ridge I took from the Amorites with my sword and my bow." So, yeah, Jacob was basically a bloody man, too. Chapter 49. Uh, does that surprise you? This is a bloody ass book. Does it really surprise you that it's got bloody men in it? Chapter 49. Then Jacob called for his sons and said, "Gather around, so I can tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength. Excelling in honor, excelling in power. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel. For you went up onto your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let me not join their assembly, for they have killed men in their anger and hamstrung oxen as they pleased. Cursed be their anger so fierce and their fury so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel. Uh, Marianne, it's not just the Bible. It's a lot of religions do that. A lot of religions will have a religious name. Verse 8. Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are a lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down, like a lioness who dares to rouse him. The scepters will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his. I just want to stop here. This is where the Christians get, you know, um, Jesus is the Lion of Judah, and you know, it's his right to rule because you know, God preordained it that way and blah, 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 blah. But you have to understand none of this ever happened. Again, none of this ever happened. And, you know, um, I don't know. I I just don't know. I don't know how I ever believed this stuff. Verse 11. He will tether his donkey to a vine, his colt to the choicest branch. He will wash his garments in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. Why would you want to wash your robes in wine? I mean, if you want to, if he's talking about purple, which was the color of kings, and there was a very good reason it was the color of kings. It was very hard to come by until um, purple was um, until purple was being made artificially. There was only one source of natural purple in the entire world, and it was in short supply, which is why it was um, reserved for kings. But I don't get the he will wash his clothes in wine unless he is referring to purple. But then wine isn't very purple now, is it? Now, of course, it does depend on what kind of grapes you use. His eyes will be darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. His border will extend toward Sidon. Issachar is a raw-boned donkey, lying down among the sheep pens. Okay, I just got to say this. Um, Why is a father calling his son a donkey? I just gotta ask. Is that some kind of euphemism? Verse 15. When he sees how good is his resting place, and how pleasant is his land, he will send his shoulder to the burden and submit to forced labor. Nice blessing, Jacob. Yeah. Nice blessing, Dad. Thanks very much for condemning me to be a slave. Verse 16. Dan will provide justice for his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels so that its riders tumble back. Again, good job insulting your sons, Jacob. Verse 18. I look for your deliverance, Lord. Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but he will attack them at their heels. Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Okay, this is like the silliest one ever because does are female deer. Oh boy. And we're just in the first book, people. Verse 21. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. With bitterness, archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility, but his bow remained steady. His strong arms stayed limber because of the hand of the mighty one of Jacob, because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, because of your father's God who helps you, because of the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the skies above, blessings of the deep springs below, blessings of the breast and womb. Your father's blessings are greater than the blessings of the ancient mountains, than the bounty of the age-old hills. Let all these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. Again, good job on insulting your sons, Jacob. Verse 27. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, in the evening he divides the plunder. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them. Really? Those were blessings? I thought he was just calling them names. Shows how much I know. Giving each the blessings appropriate to him. Then he gave them these instructions. I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave of the field of Ephraim the Hittite, the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre in Canaan, which Abraham bought along with the field as a burial place from Ephraim the Hittite. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob had finished giving instructions to his son, he drew his feet up into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Wow. Just like wow. He utters his last word with his last breath. Just a bit too coincidental, don't you think? Chapter 50. Joseph threw himself on his father and wept over him and kissed him. Then Joseph directed the physicians in his service to embalm his father Israel. So the physicians embalmed him, taking a full 40 days, for that was the time required for embalming, and the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. When the days of mourning had passed, Joseph said to Pharaoh's court, "If I have found favor in your eyes, speak to Pharaoh for me. Tell him, my father made me swear an oath and said, I am about to die. Bury me in the tomb I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me go up and bury my father, then I will return." Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear to do." So Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's officials accompanied him, the dignitaries of his court and all the dignitaries of Egypt, besides all the members of Joseph's household and his brothers and those belonging to his father's household. Only their children and their flocks and herds were left in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen also went up with him. It was a very large company. When they reached the threshing floor at Atad, near Jordan, they lamented loudly and bitterly, and there Joseph observed a 7-day period of mourning for his father. When the Canaanites who lived there saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "The Egyptians are holding a solemn ceremony of mourning." That is why that place near the Jordan is called Abel Mizraim. So Jacob's sons did as he commanded them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which Abraham had bought along with the field as a burial place from Ephraim the Hittite. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt together with his brothers and all the others who had gone with him to bury his father. Verse 15. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." When the message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph stayed in Egypt along with all his father's family. He lived there 110 years. Again, not likely. Uh, Sir Little Wolf. It was a cave that Abraham had purchased. Oh, let me put that up on the screen so you know what I'm talking about. So basically, he didn't even have to dig. They just put him in there. Um, Joseph stayed in Egypt along with all his father's family. He lived 110 years, like I said, not even, and saw the third generation of Ephraim's children. That may have been likely, but again, not 110 years. Also, the children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were placed at birth on Joseph's knee. Now, you got to understand, people married young because there wasn't any, um, they married young basically because they had to, if they wanted to carry on their lineage. Marry young, have tons of children, because at this time, infant mortality was high. Verse 24. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath and said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place. So Joseph died at the age of 110, and after they embalmed him, he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. And that is the end of the book of Genesis. Now, if this happened, which it did not, okay, let's be very clear. None of this ever happened, okay? But if it had happened, go with me here. Let's go on a pretend journey here. If it had happened, why does God need to go through all this rigmarole? I mean, why go to Egypt? Okay, because Egypt obviously symbolizes, at least at times, to the writers of the Bible, which spoiler alert, is more than 40 authors, unlike what Christians think, okay? Um, why would the authors of the Bible, who at least at times think Egypt is a pretty good place to go, I mean, why would they make this story up of famine in Canaan, and Egypt had all this grain and blah blah blah, which, by the way, they probably had all that grain not because they had saved up for 7 years of famine, but because they were extremely lucky in having the Nile River. And the Nile River would overflood its banks at a certain time each year. And so they always had food. They always had food. So it's no surprise to me that Egypt had food, even without this story taking place, which, like I said, it never did. So Egypt always had food, at least at this time. Now, there have been periods in Egypt's history where the Nile has failed to overflow its banks and has failed to produce crops. That is true. But at this time, the Nile was fairly regular, and you could pretty much count on it overflowing its banks. So Egypt would always have food. So why go through all this rigmarole of this love-hate relationship that apparently the writers of the Bible have with Egypt? Sometimes Egypt represents a saving grace, and other times Egypt is really, really bad. So, then, spoiler alert, I'm getting into Exodus a little here, but it takes 400 friggin' years for God to keep his promise. Again, didn't happen, but go with me on a pretend journey here. Takes 400 years for God to keep his promise that he's going to take Israel out of the land of Egypt. 400 years. Did God forget his promise for 399 years? I'm just asking. Seems like God's forgetful a lot. So anyway, about comment of the week. I forgot to insert this at the beginning. For comment of the week, you do not necessarily have to agree with me. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for conversation starters, basically. And so, have a conversation on my channel. Let's open up this dialogue. And so I wanted to say that before wrapping up. And this is where I'm going to be wrapping up. I now have a Patreon page. I will have patron only material out at least once a month. Maybe more, but at least once a month. Right now, I have no patrons. So right now, I don't have any patron only material. So go ahead, visit my Patreon, link in the description. If it's not in the description, it will be by the time this posts to my channel. Also, my Twitter, Discord, email, PayPal, website, and Teespring links are in the description. If you want something for your money while still supporting this channel, you can go to Teespring or you can go to my website. Both of them have merchandise on them. I will tell you that Teespring has more merchandise than my website does. Let's see, what else? I guess that's it. Have a great day, everyone. And I will see you guys later. Let me see if I can have a sound effect. Oh, never mind. I'll do it next time. I got some sound effects now. Good one, Lisa. So anyway, so yeah. So go, check out my Patreon. And I can't have any tiers until I get at least 10. And right now I have none. So, so have a great evening, everyone. And yeah, the rest of the book is just as silly as Genesis is. And we'll just see how silly it is. So, goodbye. Have a great night. And remember to use your brain because you have it for a reason. Toodaloo.